6:30. This is our reorganization meeting. First, I want to recognize some of our board members who are coming back for their third year term. Bryn Park from Barnard, Laura Bowers from Bridgewater, Matt Stout from Woodstock, and for our new board members, Sarit Werner, welcome and glad you could be here. We are now at the point, so as we don't have a board chair at this moment in time, that's why I'm opening the meeting. I'd like to ask for nominations are now in order for the office of chair. Are there nominations for chair?
I would like to nominate Carrie Bristow for board chair.
I'll second. Any other nominations for board chair? Seeing no other nominations, I'm going to call all in favor of Carrie Bristow for chair. Please raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Right, the motion carries. So I will turn the board meeting over to Carrie Bristow at this time.
Good evening.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for your support, board. And it's nice to see Lila and Joaquin here tonight as well to represent the student portion of our community. The next thing we need to do on the agenda is to elect a vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Lydia.
I'd like to nominate John Williams for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
Josh has his hand raised.
I'd like to nominate Ryan Townsend.
Is there a second?
Wow, I'll just second myself.
You can.
I'll second it.
Because if you're
willing to
take nomination, second.
All right, because I can't see everyone, I'm going to ask Matt Stout if you could help tabulate the responses.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to first ask how many people are in favor of electing John Williams as vice chair. Please raise your hand or say aye.
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 I'm not gonna do a roll call unless we have someone saying nay.
Okay.
We have two people who are not voting
Okay,
and three.
so.
Matt, just so you know, I can't officially vote tonight because I didn't do my oath of office. So
Okay.
I'm
I'm gonna-
abstaining.
I got it. I got everyone in the room except Sarit. I didn't hear your vote.
Not yet, she isn't voting.
Oh, hasn't voted. Okay, not voting. So on the phone, board members, Bob? That's an
Aye.
aye. Okay. And Lydia?
Aye.
And Carrie does get a vote.
And Carrie?
Aye.
Any other, I don't see any other board members. Okay,
And then the vote for Ryan.
Yep, and how many people are in favor of voting for Ryan Townsend for vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Josh, Sarit, and Ryan. Okay.
And Corinne's an abstention.
And Corinne abstained, so it went 8-3. Damn. For John.
All right, I'm going to call that it is a majority, so John is appointed and voted in as the vice chair. All right, thank you, everybody. And is there a nomination for the clerk position?
I'd like to nominate Laura.
Is there a second? Thank
I'll
you.
second.
Is there any other nominations for clerk? All right, hearing that, would all those in favor of voting for Lara Bauer, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it appears the ayes have it, and Lara is officially elected as the clerk. All right, now I've got to look at my agenda to see what is next. So I'll be going back and forth between my agenda and looking at all you folks. Okay, at this time, we can discuss committees and working groups, review and make changes to the committees, and review and committee membership and joining. So this afternoon, I took some time to take a look at where things were at with that. And what I see is, and I asked people to contact me to let me know of their interests. So Anna, for Finance Committee, Anna and Corinne are asking to stay. I did not hear from Ernie. Matt Stout asked to join. And then Ryan also asked to join that committee. So because Ben is off the committee. So that kind of makes that a heavy committee. Maybe Ernie perhaps would be interested in joining another committee. He's not here tonight. I can't ask him. Ryan, could you speak to your interest in the Finance Committee?
I am all set with that. If you have enough people, then, I'm happy to not partake.
Okay, thank you. Nobody else answered the email, so I'm assuming are there any other people interested in that committee?
I have a question regarding Matt. If he joins the Finance Committee, will he not be on the Building and Grounds Committee?
That is correct.
Yeah. I asked to switch.
Oh, boo. Well,
Yeah,
All right. And all of the committees are also open for students. If a student has an interest in a particular committee, we invite you as well to let us know if there's something you're interested in as we go through these committees. And if either of you are interested in finance, you would have the same situation you're in now, where you can listen, you can speak, but you don't have a vote, but you're welcome to attend. Mostly those meetings meet on the third Monday of the month, unless there's a holiday or a vacation that prevents that. They usually meet for between 1 and 2 hours at the most. And they're more informal, more discussion style. And it's the dig-in work of the board that really keeps these aspects of our board work moving forward. On the policy committee, Sam and Anne and Carrie are on that committee. Adam has moved off of it as he's left, and Owen is moving on to college, so he has left that committee. Is there somebody who's interested in joining the policy committee?
and Elliot, right?
yeah.
Elliot, yes, of course, Elliot. Without Elliot, we wouldn't probably be doing so very well.
I'm interested.
Sarita's interested, Carrie.
Okay, Sarit, I will put your name on that committee. I'm sort of ex officio on that committee, mostly because sometimes we need to have a quorum, and we didn't have those quorums. So I may or may not stay on it unless I know that I'm needed to be there for a quorum reason. Okay, buildings and grounds. We have Matt switching to finance, so that leaves Bob, Katie, Lara, sorry, are staying. And Ryan, you had indicated an interest in that as well. Are you you are on it right now, aren't you?
Yes, I would like to stay.
Okay. So that sounds like there's 4 strong members on that, that committee. For the working groups, we have the high school, middle school, working group for, the new high school. And that has Ryan, John Williams, and Bob. Ben obviously is off that committee. Is there anybody interested in joining that, working group?
Harry, I'm happy to step up if it expands in its needs and we need an additional person on it.
Okay, well, so I'll tentatively put you on that working group. Configuration and enrollment currently has Carrie, Anna, and we did have students on that. That committee, working group doesn't meet very often, but it might end up doing more things as we look at, what the state is telling us to do and, all of those things. Right now, it hasn't been active. Is there
Carrie,
anyone?
I'd be happy to join that group.
Okay. Great. Anyone else? Okay, the communication committee currently has Sam, Lydia, and Josh on it. I'm gonna ask Ryan to speak in a minute about his idea regarding the communication committee. But for the moment, there's no movement on that one, and negotiations currently is Carrie, Ryan, and John. That committee could go dormant for a year, assuming we settled the current negotiations, because the teachers are in the first of a 3-year contract, and the support staff hopefully will also be in a similar situation. But in any case, that group is working there. And Ryan, I wanted to ask you if you'd like to speak to your idea regarding maybe a transition or a shift or even a new working group.
Sure, my idea is there's just, often there seems to be sections or portions of our community that doesn't feel represented by the board or know the direct approach to have their concerns met. So I was thinking of making a committee of like a community concern committee, whereas something simple where 25 people or get a signature of some sort together, that they can meet with 3 or 4 different town representatives from the board directly, and we can try to mitigate whatever the issue is before it blows up into a bigger situation. So yeah, that was about that.
So they would, like, if there was like we would set a number, like if there was they put together a proposal or something and they got 25 signatures or more, then we would put together, and then we would just put together a group of 3 to 4. And then we should always have either like one of the chairs sitting on it too, whatever the meeting was.
We could, sure. And it goes for staff too, teachers and stuff. I mean, we had
Mhm.
emails and stuff, with a decent number. And it puts them in an awkward spot, having to speak up sometimes against administration or in general. Same with certain community members, so it's more of a, not so public, but more direct, and we can discuss whatever it is with them.
Mhm.
Do our research on what we can do to help or
Mhm.
solve it, get back to them and try to handle this without it exploding into a wider thing.
Would it still be a public meeting and so be warned and?
Well, I don't think it'd be a public meeting, it'd be with some board members, or the board as a whole would have to vote in whatever direction we go, of course. But it's just to streamline concerns within the community. So we can address it quicker and.
But if you
more
have a
thorough.
committee and it has all the members there, it has to be publicly warned.
It'd be more of a working group, I think.
Maybe
Yeah, it would be a working group, so it'd still have to be warned.
Okay, yeah.
It would have to be warned in public, but, it would be a working group, not a full one, but it would definitely have to be warned and like recorded. And it would be good that it was warned and recorded, cause that would, you don't wanna raise it as like no transparency and stuff like that.
Sure.
So, but I think it's a great idea.
Thanks.
I have a question. I think it's a good idea. I did notice that we prepared a response after the vote, and it looked like it came from the Community Engagement Committee or Community Engagement Team. And I hadn't actually seen us use that signature before on a note to the community. So is that the Communications Committee, or was that just like, Carrie, was that you? Like, how, does anyone know what I'm talking about? I feel like we signed something as a group, but it said community engagement.
Is the community engagement, that's me.
So that's the Communications Committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
and, that's whenever I've been directed by, messages by, Carrie, as the chair to put out publicly. Just listserv requires you to sign it.
Yeah,
So I try to sign it, just kind of a general communication committee signature.
and I thought it was great. I'm bringing it up. It was really good. I almost feel like we have to do more of that, you know, and I think it overlaps with what is being proposed in this new committee.
Yeah, it sounds like there'd be a like a community, like a liaison, almost like a board liaison group, that communications, I think they would have to work closely, as far as movement and sharing information with the public. I think it's a great idea.
Thanks.
Corinne?
I'm just wondering if this intersects at all with what's on the agenda later with having, maybe it wouldn't necessarily be a regular board agenda item, but I want to flesh out a little more how it would work. Like, would the board representatives as part of this working group then kind of report as needed, or each meeting or something, or bring something up if warranted or something like that on a board, at a
think-
board
yeah.
meeting?
Yes, Corinne, just like we ask any group that wants to speak that's been meeting, whether it's a committee or a working group, they have the opportunity to share current information.
Got it. Yep. Great.
Any other thoughts on that?
What did you want to call it?
I mean, I still remember.
I think Ryan had said the community concern working group. Perhaps we can come out with a more, concern makes it only negative. I think so. We could also have it be perhaps another word that contains not just concerns, but also ideas or suggestions. So, Ryan, how about if you and John sit down and talk about that?
Established.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. Established version of community.
Like you could keep, Carrie, you could keep using community engagement committee potentially, then just kind of make it more of like this, developing this version of this committee, right? Like another, what's the word I'm looking
Well,
for?
it's getting input from-
Mission or iteration, like another mission of this committee.
It's getting input from two sides.
Yeah.
the way you do it, which is good.
You know,
So would you be good with that name, Community Engagement Working Group?
Sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
I'm willing to be on that with Ryan, just because I've been doing a lot with the communication since, and I'm on that committee still. I like the idea and I'm willing to work on that. I don't know if I could, have the time to do that and policy. So if you feel like with Surratt joining policy, you might have. And Elliot, I know that you know that you can ask me anything. It's not like
You
I'm
don't-
going from the
You
board
don't
or
have to lead
anything.
policy.
Okay.
Policy.
Well, or if you feel like there's somebody else who can do in community engagement, I can stay on policy. I'm saying I don't know if I can do both. Trying to not take on too much.
But it might,
Whatever
and
you
I
want.
and I think training some more people in policy, because policy is
That's fine.
very nuanced
Yeah,
Yes.
and.
I am only one more year on the board,
That's what
so that's an important thing to keep. I have one more year left on my term and my son is a senior next year, so you guys got me for one more year. Then I'm
that's good.
peace.
All right, is there another board member who's interested in being on that committee? Perhaps, working group. Perhaps one of the students might be interested in being part of that.
I actually wanted to express an interest in the policy committee.
Okay, thank you.
Students on policy was great. Owen was doing some on policy too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to be on the community engagement committee as well. Because it works behind the communications committee, so.
Yeah, Carrie,
Okay.
I need to join engagement as well.
Who's that speaking?
Joaquin, student.
Joaquin.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay. All right, as we look at this, let me check my agenda here. Are there any other thoughts or any other person having a sudden decision they want to join one of the committees or working groups? All right, then we'll move on to discussing the Code of Ethics. I think Sherry may have some copies there for those in the room to take a look at. And
I failed miserably and again, Raina had to step in, so there's a copy in front of each person, board member.
okay, well, I've reviewed it again. It's always a good thing to review these things. And there's three aspects of the Code of Ethics set out by the Vermont School Boards Association. One is acting within the scope of my official role. And with reviewing that, it says, you know, that our job as board members is to see that schools are well run, but not to run them. And to act only as a member of the board and not assume any individual authority when the board is not in session unless otherwise directed by the board. Give no directives as an individual board member to any school administrator or employee, publicly or privately, and avoid making commitments that may compromise the decision-making ability of the board or administrators. I think that we do a pretty decent job in that area. So I think that, you know, I think we understand what our roles are there. And the second group is uphold the highest ethical standards, which really has to do with us not taking money or other kinds of things for our work, and not looking for any gifts or compensations for being a board member or casting a vote. The agreement to recuse ourselves if we find that we might have an appearance of conflict of interest, and not agreeing to hiring any employee who's already under contract from another school district unless the authorities at that other school will release them. I think we do hold to that quite well. And then the last piece of it is respecting my peers, my constituents, and confidentiality considerations. We're expected to voice our opinions respectfully and treat with respect other board members, administrators, school staff, and members of the public. Maintain confidentiality of information and discussion conducted in executive session, and uphold applicable laws with respect to the confidentiality of student and employee information, and attend all regularly scheduled board meetings insofar as possible. So in thinking about those things, I think it's important for us as board members to realize that when we speak publicly, regardless of if we're thinking we're an individual versus a board member, we need to be really careful that it's clear that this is my opinion. And if we've made decisions as a board, it's important that we uphold those decisions when even we may not agree 100%. And I just think we need to be careful in this area because these are the ethics that we're expected to abide by. So in any case, I just wanted to review that quickly so that we could sign these documents and get them into Raina. We don't do anything with them except that realize that this is what we're all agreeing to. Any thoughts on that?
Do we need a motion to adopt the Code of Ethics, or do you want us just each to individually sign it?
I think we don't have to adopt it officially. It's just that this is what the Vermont School Boards Association asks people to voluntarily sign, saying they agree with these things and they'll abide by these things. It's not new. It's something we do every year.
Can we give our signed copy to the vice chair?
Sure.
Happy to.
For people who have been on the board and have signed those, why is it necessary they do it each year?
I think it's just a recommitment to the agreement.
Okay.
But if you have a strong reason why you don't want to do that, that's, nobody's going to make you do that.
No, just efficiency. If they haven't changed, and when you come on the board, you commit to abiding by those, I think it's understood that you abide by them for your term.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree. If you're in the middle of an existing term.
I also don't see that number just down.
Well,
Sure.
politics,
Yep, that's fine. All right, moving on, we have the two schedules for the board meetings and the committee meetings. And I know, Sam, you're always asking, why are we changing sometimes for these dates? It's because of holidays and the annual meeting prevents us from meeting on the first Monday in March because we haven't had an annual, we haven't had the board, the vote yet, and then it happens twice with the committee schedule as well. In that January 26th is the committee schedule because of the President's Day the week before, and then in April, it's a school vacation happens. So it's moved back. So twice a year for each of these committee meetings and working group / meetings. And our board meetings, we change. So just wanted to make sure that's clear. So is there a motion to approve the committee meeting schedule and the regular meeting schedule?
So moved. I'll second.
Any, all in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Now we have to appoint an SUSD voting delegate for statewide health insurance because we all have the opportunity as a school districts and supervisory unions to cast one vote to ratify the agreement reached by the statewide healthcare bargaining commission. I don't remember who was the person for this past year. But he
Landon.
noticed, who was it?
Oh,
Who was the person for that?
Adam.
Adam, okay. I think they do this vote at the School Board Association conference, if I'm not mistaken, don't they, Sherry?
That's correct.
Since I go to that conference because I need to do 8 hours of board training, I pretty much go to that conference. I'd be glad to do it if you want me to do it.
I nominate Carrie Bristow.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yes, so last year I went to it and I couldn't do anything because I couldn't vote. And it's literally a 5-minute meeting, so I think we can handle that. All right, I think that's the end of the organizational meeting, correct? Yes, I think so. Let me find. Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Right, the ayes have it. Okay, at this time, then we will begin the regular board for March. We have a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting at 6:59 p.m. And are there any amendments to the agenda? John, if you can be helpful in calling people out, I have to follow the agenda, which I'm watching instead of the actual Zoom people.
Yes,
So-
happy to. I'm not seeing any hands at the moment.
All right, then we'll move on. And now we have an opportunity for public comment. Just so everyone is on the same page, the chair or the vice chair will acknowledge the person before they speak. We ask that you address the chair or the board as a whole only. State your name and town of residence, and you'll have a time limit of 2 minutes unless there's just a few people here who want to give comment. And if you're on Zoom, please raise your digital hand and wait to be acknowledged. And do the same thing, state your name and town and address the chair and the board, and time limit of 2 minutes. Just to review, if somebody has already spoken on a topic, they are not going to be recognized again until others have first been given the opportunity to comment. And we do expect order and decorum of all people present, including board members. Thank you. And saying that, are there any public comments?
Yeah, we got a couple in here, so. Who would like to go first?
Sorry, hi, I'm Kristen Hubble. So to the Mountain View Supervisory Union Board, thank you so much for continuing to fund our UA positions despite our district's difficult budgeting situation with the state. I appreciate you listening to the collective voices of staff and community members and revisiting the issue to develop alternate solutions. As a teacher and parent of 3 children at Mountain Views, I am deeply invested in creating a school culture where all voices are heard and respected, especially those of the professionals on the ground level and directly impacted. This type of collaboration is essential for building trust and understanding. December 2024, about 40 Mountain Views faculty members wrote and signed a letter to the board. I am following up in hopes of a response. The signees would like a pathway for communication and collaboration, especially when important decisions or issues arise. The letter highlighted several challenging situations that could have been avoided if we had been a part of the conversation. The current structure does not allow open dialogue with the board, public, or senior administration. Going through the chain of command often results in being dismissed or a dead end, and the union route is a reactive and somewhat negative approach. Asking tough questions can be associated with being a squeaky wheel, while we should embrace multiple perspectives, contexts, and experiences. Not everyone is comfortable speaking during public comment, being honest in surveys with their name attached, signing letters, or joining or going to the union. This lack of partnership leads to apathy, which I have seen firsthand and find concerning. The initial letter encouraged the board to evaluate and make structural changes to ensure equitable pathways for communication and collaboration. The last 2 sections of the letter outline the signees' desire to share ideas, relevant information, and feedback in different venues. And I included the letter on the back here. The information gained from honest face-to-face conversations and spending time in our schools is valuable for assessing the state of the matter, identifying themes, and determining next steps. So here are some more possible solutions. Faculty board member representatives without voting rights, revised faculty advisory committee meetings, listening and learning sessions, anonymous surveys through a third party, routine board visits to schools to meet with staff, routine senior administration visits to schools to observe and meet with staff. I look forward to partnering with you to find a solution that benefits our community. Respectfully, Kristen Hubble.
Thank you, Kristen. I think that is going to be addressed in an agenda item, at least at some level, a bit later in the evening.
You guys to pass these around if you would. It's something that I created. I want you to look at when talking. I'm not really one I'm sorry, Bryce Samuel from Bernard. Not usually one to read off a script, but if you guys that do know me, know 2 minutes is tough, so I'm gonna read.
Do you have any more of these, Chris?
I don't, I did take it visually, both Sherry and Raina. I don't know if they're either in the chat or. We can make sure it's circulated. I can send it to all the board members right after as well. I'm just here to say that this district is in the high school pretty great. I think they're pretty great because the faculty, the administration, the board, and the support staff are pretty great as the students, their families, and because of the broader community. Last year I mocked up this brochure for the high school because I was hoping we could produce something like it to send to area choice towns. And tonight I just wanted to share it so you guys can, for those of you that have been here and those of you that are new, can get a sense for the place that you're representing. We've heard proposals from the Scott administration and proposed legislation just starting to surface around education reform and construction aid. We have to take what's great about this district and expand upon it. There's a real chance we could lose this high school, either because of its condition or because it doesn't work in the state's plan. Are there things that can be improved? Sure, let's do that. But it's your job as board members to ignore some of the noise and focus on what you've been elected to do, which is to provide our students with the best education possible at a value to our taxpayers. Closing the school isn't that. So what you need to do, so you need to do what you can to ensure the Mountain View School District and Woodstock Union High School are exactly what the state wants, no matter what the state ends up wanting. You have a lot of work to do this year, but you're not alone. You have a great group of administrators leading the way. Their faculty and staff that I know are ready to help however they can. You have a community full of motivated people who want this district to not only survive, but to thrive. My asks for the board, as you do this work, be forward thinking and open to doing things a little bit differently. Get to know one another. I didn't plan this, I promise. The administrators, faculty, students, and community to listen and really understand the intent of what those folks have to say and communicate. An area that I think we've been working on for a while that needs a lot more work. Inviting community members to working groups, coordinating with the select boards if it makes sense, inviting dialogue from our teachers, support staff, and students. Tell the community about both the wins and the struggles as often as possible so everybody feels more informed. We're all on the same team, but we need to be on the same page to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bryce, for all of that. Is there any other public comment? All right, then we will move to the reports, starting with the superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. First of all, just open up, I wrote this about a week ago and talking about the tension between what's happening, the work we have to do in this district and the work we're doing at the state. And a lot of my energy is being pulled in both those directions. On Saturday, February 22nd, I met with the Vermont Superintendents Association trustees and regional presidents. At this time, we're really working with the Vermont House Education Committee on their piece of legislation on addressing the needs of finding immediate opportunities where we can find greater efficiency and accountability so that more time can be leveraged to make thoughtful decisions in such areas as education, finance, and governance. So what can be done this year legislatively, what can be done in the future, and how can we partner with legislators in those decisions? One of the pieces of our strategic plan goals that, and I'm working with Principal Zoerheide from Barnard on, is around the communication piece as well. 2 years ago, I was part of a presentation on a communication model called Family and Educators Together Teams, or FET teams. Last December, myself, Principal Simplemani, Assistant Principal Beeland, and Principal Zoerheide also did a training session around FET teams. We're very excited about this opportunity. It has a very different dynamic in that families are invited in, families set the agenda, and we'll begin our first FET team meeting in April. We'll provide dinner and we'll provide childcare. So that'll be our first opportunity on April 4th as a pilot of this model. And then the hope is that next year in the fall, Woodstock Elementary and the middle school, also high school, will also have these FET teams. So I'm pretty excited about that work. I like it because it is the community bringing in their agenda. It's not the teachers and administrators choosing the topics and presenting on it. So it's a very unique approach. Another piece of work that we're looking at is around professional development, offering a different pathway for teachers to expand on their craft. There's a national movement called micro-credentialing, where it's an opportunity in between taking coursework, and we're in a tough place to take graduate work. Most often it's online, most often it checks a box for its endorsement. And it really has a hard time of how does that transition to the actual classroom. So micro-credentialing talks about some foundational coursework, all that we offer here. The second phase of it is how do you connect that professional development to student outcomes? So the work you're learning in professional development, how does that happen in terms of the real-time work you're doing with your students? And the third piece that we're looking at is how are you building capacity in the district? So what piece of work, is it a exemplar lesson? Is it mentoring a new teacher coming in? How do we build those three pieces of work and create evidence from each of those, which then results in a micro-credential that can go on a resume and may have a financial stipend annually. We have national board certification and we increase that line. It's a really heavy lift. I know we have one, Heather Veneta at the high school has done that. She's mentoring a few teachers in that pathway, but this is an intermediary step that we can leverage. I presented to the Faculty Advisory Council last week. They're excited about that idea. And we'd like to pilot in the fall and see what teachers, we have amazing teachers. Some were early adopters of the work we're doing in literacy and math. We decided to focus on those two areas because we've done so much there, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a micro credential in social emotional learning or executive functioning. We'll be the first in the state to offer this. Often it's modules that you study online. We really want to make sure it has direct correlation to what teachers are doing and their students in the classroom. So we're really excited about this work, and it sounds the teachers are well. So that'll be piloted hopefully in the fall if Jen and I and Julie and Patty can get ourselves organized. It's a heavy lift. And finally, it's not my report, but I just wanted to share that Linda LaPrette, who was our director of HR for 15 years, had her final day last Friday.
Wow.
So just want to recognize her commitment to supporting teachers and staff and being available for any kind of question and being available to the team. She has excitedly moved on to her next adventure. Our new director of human resources is Marina Bishop. And she is learning the job and flying the plane at the same time. So we are now in the process of identifying a replacement for Marina. We've
Yeah, you didn't
renamed.
do enough, right?
Yeah, 2 jobs.
You didn't really need, you just need to add a little bit more to your plate.
Yeah, she's excellent. And we're renaming that position because, as Rena said, she was doing many more things. She was not doing my email or my phones, but she really has many more responsibilities. And so we've renamed that position and has posted, and we have 2 internal candidates. But I just, again, recognize Linda for all her years of commitment to our faculty and staff, and Raina for taking on the helm there. So, that's my report.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Raina, and thank you, Linda. Does any board member wish to ask a question or comment on Sherry's report?
I'll ask a question. It's not related to the topics that you just covered in your paragraph. I'm so impressed with this brochure, and I would like to know if there's time to implement this and put it in the hands of all the students at Waldorf, at Heartland Middle School. Because we talk about this, I mean, it's my like 4th year on the board now, and we talked about all this recruiting we're gonna do. And I'm wondering, like, what recruiting have we done? I know we had a counselor go to Heartland. Beyond that, have we ever done anything like this, and could we? Because this is great.
Yeah, I can, Bryce and I are meeting at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And there has been work, and I can have Aaron report out what efforts they've made in terms of recruiting thus far. I know that we had 20 students thus far do a tour who will be freshmen in the fall.
Is there benefit to doing something like this for the whole district and not just the high school? I might know a guy who's really good at putting trifold pamphlets together. That's not to throw out.
Is your proposal being to send it to like all residents of all districts?
Well, I know like Weathersfield sends a bunch of kids to Reading because they don't have a pre-K. Now that those students don't often stay in our district, but we wouldn't know that unless they actually came into the district, and the folks that I've talked to have been really impressed, really they don't want to bring their kids back there, but because of the tuition situation. But I think it'd be beneficial to have this not only for Woodstock, but for the high school, but for the district wide, yeah.
I think most of our promotions have gone digital as opposed to print. So there are only 10 copies because I'm not allowed to do color printing for more than that. So, there's a cost associated, and we looking at, cost benefit analysis. And I think definitely having resources. So if we bring them and get them out to 8th graders, but can we get them to, really being directive around it? I think we're trying to stay away as little paper as we can, but this is a beautiful document, and I think captures, we have the, annual report that you'll see next month. But I think and we have our own student who is highly successful at social media. I think having our students, what would a student look like? How do we really get our message to students? And I think, Joaquin, I know you're doing some great stuff with the sports, but I think thinking about what are those pieces, what materials can we present that would make a difference for a student. I think that's a great.
So could the community engagement?
Josh is
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think from my standpoint is that having a student like Joaquin go and actually having these eighth graders going into high school, see a student is way more efficient than seeing a counselor or a teacher. They're talking to a peer. I mean, there's a whole different like
Mhm.
environment when you're talking to a peer and when you're talking to a teacher or a counselor. And that's gonna get kids interested, which is gonna therefore get parents interested.
And typically, we've sent students with counselors or a teacher from the town that we are interested in. So if we're going to Heartland, we bring a Heartland student. So that's been most typical, the path they've used in terms of recruiting.
I mean, I get that. I'm just saying, I think it goes a step further when they don't have a counselor that like. You gotta remember, like, you're trying to talk to these kids, there's gonna be things that they're like, oh, there's a teacher there. Him going and being, she's gonna be the example, still you don't mind, but you going and talking to an eighth grader, you can be like, these are the positives, they can go, oh, is there a negative, you can actually like be honest and talk to them, and that I think goes and helps with recruiting a lot,
Mhm.
just my opinion.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I mean, I would support getting out to more than just eighth graders if that's an option, and as many as possible, give them some time to think, look into stuff, talk to friends and other community members. The more time they have, or the sooner they're more knowledgeable about it, the better, I would think.
So maybe we can just, to move on, since I brought it up, can we just have for the next board meeting, a report out of what tactical steps we're taking to recruit next year's freshman class?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think the honest question about elementary, the only elementary town with elementary students that I'm aware of outside of pre-K that would have choice is Pittsfield. But it'd be great to get all your students, not just most of them. So, you know, we could certainly do that at the elementary level too.
I don't think Weathersfield, they can keep going, even if they want.
It's really just a pre-K, they come up to the pre-K. that we
Yeah,
offer, and
even,
then-
I just think if they
And right now,
wanted
pre-K
to,
is overflowing.
I know even if they could if they wanted to, because they don't have choice.
Not yet.
But there are Weathersfield kids who are at this high school now,
Yeah,
who.
for high school now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Can I ask a
We
question?
have, oh, sure.
Oh, Anna has
The request for a report from Matt, who's putting that report together?
I was going to invite the high school, either Dr. Singleton or someone from the high school to do a report from the high school. Yep,
I just wanted clarity on that.
yep, thank you.
All right, we have an enrollment report printed in our board book to look at, pretty stable. And the Director of Tech and Innovation, also the same person, has some interesting information about Google to review. We have a report from the Director of CIA, and I think, Jen, are you there to say any comments on that report? If you'd like to.
Thank you for the opportunity. Jen Settle, I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I started the report with just a reminder about a way that you can access resources about the Department of CIA via the SU website. So if you have questions, that might be a resource for you to go to. Of course, you can always contact me, but I just want to make sure you have that in your hands. I also shared about exciting thing that's going on. We received a grant. I applied for, and we received a grant from the Barr Foundation and Next Generation Learning Challenges to bring 9 people from the high school to a school in Tucson, Arizona on a learning study. This school or this district in Arizona apparently has a really incredible flexible pathways program. And so we have 2 students, we have 2 teachers, Director of Counseling, Dr. C, Ms. Sousa's going, I'll be going. And we're going to take a look at what kinds of flexible pathway opportunities are out there that we could learn from and maybe apply back in our own context. Oh yeah, and Elliot's going, and wherever we'll be there. So yeah, a nice crew. And it actually is a kind of a neat process. We're going to do some walkthroughs in our location first, collect some data around what we're seeing, work with some people from the foundation to think about what our needs are. check out this location in Arizona and then come back to our own context and try and apply them. So that's gonna be happening April and May. And then the last thing I wanted to share was we are actually in a really long stretch of school without any breaks, which is amazing because we have really like solid dedicated learning time and it can be a little bit exhausting. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to everybody for really maximizing these next few weeks because we're heading into end of year assessments, some state level testing, and it really is a wonderful opportunity for focus. But I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone for all of our hard work.
Thank you, Jen. Does any board member have a question or a comment for Jen? All right, moving on, we have a report from both Lila and Joaquin. If you have certain things you want to point out from your reports, please feel free, starting with Lila.
All right, I'm just gonna read through my report. 7th through 9th grade Yo Theater performed a musical rendition of Shakespeare's As You Like It, adapted by Shannon Taub last weekend. Players did an extraordinary job with what were many of the group's first large roles. Sophomores and upperclassmen occupied tech and ensemble roles in addition to executing their infusions of creative vision. Due to an outbreak of illness during dress rehearsal, I and the rest of the group spent the following performances very pointedly not touching anything. Members of the newly formed Social Action Club have been discussing the VT Digger article addressing racism in the school. They all acknowledge the reality of it being a complicated legal situation that the school and its representatives had to handle with care and that we don't understand fully. However, they all express a strong desire to have the issues presented by the article discussed in school in any way possible. A main concern that popped up consistently was the worry that discrimination isn't being addressed for fear of that address being executed the wrong way.
Thank you, Lila. Joaquin?
Joaquin here. Woodstock athletes have had success this winter season, so kind of harping off of what Sherry introduced me as. I do manage the Woodstock student section on Instagram, so I've had firsthand access to the successes of our athletes. Woodstock Boys Nordic Skiing won the VPA's Nordic Championship, claiming the title in both classic and skate events. Boys basketball made it to the quarterfinals. They lost a 3-point nail biter. Thetford did go on to win the D3 championship, unfortunately. Boys hockey faced Hartford this past Tuesday, lost in a bittersweet 4-2 final. They were certainly underdogs this season. They've got a lot of young talent. And the student body would like to congratulate these athletes on their accomplishments throughout the winter season. And we look forward to the spring sports kicking off. You can see down there, Nordic captain Quinn Uba, class of 25, crosses the finish line to secure the state title. Woodstock's third annual Poetry Out Loud contest took place on February 12th, seeing a wide range of students participating. 22 students performed moving poems in front of a live audience of peers, judges, and teachers. Poems range from blissful love and relationship themes to heroism and times of oppression. After a rigorous judgment process, Tegan Miller of the class of 2027 was selected as the champion of Woodstock's Poetry Out Loud competition. Her presentation of Summer by Chen Chen garnered 178 points from judges. We'd like to congratulate Tegan on that success. And I know Owen Corsi, who appears to be in our Zoom, is one of the judges there. So thank you for your diligent judging.
All right, thank you very much. Any comments or questions for the students?
I would love to join in on helping the social talk about racism in our district and what we can do to improve the situation. That'd be awesome.
I'll make
Okay.
a comment. I'll make a quick comment. The boys Nordic team not only won the state championship Division II, but if their times had been counted in Division I, they would have won Division I. And 2 of the kids are now out in Utah representing New England in the nationals. James Underwood and Joyce Luca.
Very cool.
Nice.
All right, now we have a very exciting report on the annual meeting results. 4 of us attended that event with the moderator, and 5 really actually. So the results of that were let me see, I gotta get to the place so I can look at it. Corinne Park, in Article 1, we had some elections, so Corinne and Lara retained their seats, Elliot as well. well. There's an unfilled term, but Anna says there's a good prospect. From Reading and Woodstock elected Matt Stout and Sarit Werner for 3 years. As well, as we know, the budget passed quite nicely. So we thank all of the voters that supported the budget, 1,054 yeses to 653 noes and 3 blanks. And then at the in-person election, Matt Maxim was voted in as the moderator, Raina Bishop for clerk, Callista Brennan is the treasurer. The treasurer will receive a 7,500 stipend for the work. And this was the last live meeting we will hold because the group voted to vote all public questions in the future by Australian ballot. I don't know if there's any questions about that, but.
I have a quick question about the unfilled Reading seat. Is that able to, if there is an interested person, be filled during the year before?
There is, yeah, and there was somebody who I chatted with this weekend who seemed really interested, and I think that with a couple more conversations, I can fill that seat, and actually I chatted with Carrie about what that looks like, and that is that person would then approach the Reading Select Board, and they would appoint that person for a year. I don't know where it goes from there, but yeah, there's definitely a way in, and I'm working on it.
All right, the next item of business is to recommend an administrative hire to the board for approval for the WHSMS Assistant Principal. And Sherry, would you like to speak to that?
And as well as Ryan participated in the search. So I think there was a really extensive search for an assistant principal. It came down to 2 strong candidates. They had visits with students and faculty and staff. After that, Aaron met with them again to ask some questions and is recommending Chris, let's say it right, Lanzolata. Pretty close. Am I close or not?
Close enough.
Close enough. He has been a high school assistant principal for 19 years. He's coming from New Jersey. He's very excited to move to this region. And I think he's going to bring some really strong ideas in terms of systems and some fresh ideas in terms of how to support students and faculty. Anything you want to say, Ryan, about the process?
The process was great. Part of the interview with him, he zoomed in for it. There was a panel of us that met with him and very qualified and then some. And I think he has a lot of ideas and systems that he's worked in his 24 years of experience that will go well with Sinkamani in our district.
In my final meeting with him, he talked about watching board meetings on video and how impressed he was on the functioning of this team. I think maybe in New Jersey, they could take some lessons from us, but he really did his homework and looking at our website, looking at our annual report, watching board meetings. So he's very excited to, he has a house up here, a second home. He's been transitioning and decided this was the year. And I think we're going to really benefit from adding him to the administrative team.
Right. Oh, go ahead.
Just curious if what the position, what has been talked about for Tom Emery for next year, just because I love Tom, I'm one of his biggest fans, and I just want to make sure he's still gonna be very part of the administration team or this education team in some way.
So myself and Aaron met with Tom today around options and thoughts and ideas he had around he can continue his administrative credential. He's still in a provisional license and what he can do to continue to grow and build those skills. So we have some ideas that we've batted around and we'll see how things shake out. We're really in that kind of movement part of the school year where people are changing and shifting positions. So we have a really strong plan and he absolutely wants to stay in the district, wants to continue to develop those skills. So I'm excited.
He's a huge asset for the community, has been for what, like 2 decades or something like that. So I'm glad to hear that he'll still be around.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, we need a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
All right, are there any further questions? Any more discussion?
Thanks to the hiring committee, including Ryan, because I know that's a heavy lift. Thank God for.
All right, all those in favor of hiring the new assistant principal, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, he is unanimously approved to join our team. The next, thing that we have to discuss here on our agenda is accepting a resignation from Brittany, Gabrielle Bradley, yes?
Yes.
Gabrielle, she is resigning from a position at Prosper Valley and Barnard, I believe.
Prosper Valley and Reading as the
Okay.
PE. Yes, yes, she will be moving on. This was her first year with us and has decided to go in a different pathway, but she's brought some good energy. She and I did train on the ropes course together last summer, so that was really fun. So she brought a lot of energy to her classroom and she's now looking to do something different.
Oh, and is there a motion to accept the resignation?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. The next agenda item is something that I asked Raina to put on this agenda to discuss some things that have come up through various places around some routine agenda items and perhaps some additions to what we regularly report on. These are meant to be brief, not long, but to keep us up to date on what's going on in the state, what's going on in the community, in our facilities. And so I'm making a suggestion that we have a standing legislative report. Sherry sometimes does that, but we could also invite one of our legislators to come and give a report as to what the latest is coming from Montpelier. Another area that we have constantly hear about is the facility and our facilities and where there may be problems and where the long range needs to go, and that could come through buildings and grounds, but to keep in front of us the various things that impact student learning because of the deficiencies in our facilities. We just already did discuss the communication engagement team, so that's going to go into effect hopefully over the next month or so, and to form a team for that. And the other item was to include a faculty and staff report to provide the input that was discussed by Kristen Hubble and others, to give us insights as to, what's on their minds, what the highlights are, and also things that they're concerned about, so that the faculty and a staff member, I think it would be nice to have the balance of the both, could provide those reports to us and speak to them during our meetings. So I'm just putting these on the table, and I would like to have folks weigh in on that.
Sam?
I think they're all really good things to be added to our regular meetings. How would we go about choosing what faculty and staff members would be putting, together those reports or, doing that?
My thought was, I spoke with the union leaders and suggested that they hold some kind of a vote. People could nominate themselves and they can hold a vote so that it's not just from one building or from, the majority, who has the most members in the building, but for them to think about that themselves, and that should be from them, not from us.
Yeah, no, I agree. Definitely. Sounds good.
So, but they're
Speak more
union members.
I wanted to kind of jump off of Sam's, but also Corinne had her hand up first. So Corinne, you want to speak?
Sure. Am I unmuted? Yes. Yeah, I think that another thought that was shared with me, and maybe this would be folded into the faculty staff report section, but the idea that a school, each, a school, one at a time could sort of bring forward, principal, teacher, maybe even student, sort of bringing something to the board in a short, presentation about, kind of allowing the board to learn something more about that school and that campus by having that representation at the meeting. Something that's going on at the school or whatever they felt like. So I don't know if that would be separate from this sort of faculty staff idea, or just something that they might decide as faculty to say, oh, this is, we want to highlight Reading this week, or this month, or if this would be something different. There's a little bit distinct of an idea, I guess.
Thank you.
So I will share, so next, in May, the middle school was asked to present, and so they will be presenting at the May board meeting on work and things they've been doing on. But
Great.
absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Anna, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just sort of thinking about, so we've heard from a public member who sounds like they are a staff member, that the union, I'm wondering if the union is the best way to go about it, and the dynamics around having someone seated at its table speaking publicly who may be a union member, and what the legalities around that are. Because I would, yeah, I'll stop there for a second.
Well, Carrie, you were the board rep as a teacher. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I would sit in the audience, and I would prepare a report. At that time, it was primarily from the middle school, high school, because we were not a unified district or a consolidated district. So I was representing that group, and I would prepare, I would solicit information across the school, and I would consolidate it into bullet points. I never revealed names unless they asked me to, and I would just simply talk about the good things and the concerns, and it provided them, and I gave it to them in a written form. So the board had it. And I thought it was a useful tool for communication. And then when the superintendents changed, they just eliminated that position. It wasn't really a position, but it was an opportunity, I guess I'd call it.
Yeah, because I just want to make sure, because it sounds like at this point, if there's a concern that staff have, the union isn't the route that they've chosen to go. And I want to make sure that, and I love all of these reports, but I especially love having a staff on the board, like we do students. It's something I've been thinking about for a bit. And I just want to make sure that their voices are being heard unfiltered and as comfortable as possible. I will also say that we go on some really long meetings at times that are, upwards of 4 hours. And I do request that we have some flexibility about those reports. If there's somebody who has a report that's comfortable during a really long meeting, that they just give it to us in print as opposed to verbalizing their report, that we have some flexibility around that to protect us from sitting here all night long.
Thank you. Heather? You're muted, Heather. You're still muted.
We can't read sign
I
language.
guess, I think she's quit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I've been struggling with technology today, and also I'm recovering from being sick, which is why I'm not there in person. I just wanted to share that Carrie Bristow's reports to the board were incredibly valuable. But she brought to that position not only enthusiasm, but incredible expertise, and she had the capacity to be concise, as Anna just said, would be important when it was needed. But I just wanted to say that during the time she did that work, it was remarkably valuable.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to echo what Anna said and something that Kristen brought up. I'd like the teacher and staff member to sit at this table to be able to not only just give that report at that one time, but be able to speak to any of the items on the agenda. Because I feel like if it was just a report, they might
wind up being like a month behind on things, like we would discuss something, but they couldn't say anything, and then they would put it in the report later, and it just sounds like a very dissonant, way of going about the conversation.
Sam?
I agree with what you just said. I think what, becomes then a logistical issue potentially is, and I'm just bringing this up so that we can talk about it, not because I want to poo the idea. But that you then might need teachers from every school, like a teacher or a student from every school, because I mean, then you can just do one teacher from, like, from Reading, from Barnard, from TVS, and Woodstock, from the high school, because each school, and then how many people we have sitting around this table, we already have an 18-person board, so, Matt.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that the teachers who signed this letter, probably could elect a representative, like the role that Carrie had, and solicit the bullet points from each of the campuses on an anonymous basis. And then I support the idea of having that faculty member who represents that group to be a voting board member. And then present the report. And even they can hide behind the anonymous elements, right? Like, I'm just reporting what I anonymously took from bullet points from other people. It's not attributed to me. But I don't think we can have one faculty member from every campus, because then we'd have 7 more people in the room talking, and we wouldn't get out of here till 1 a.m.
Yeah, but we would make sure, sorry, Josh, I know you're having, but we would make sure that all the, teachers and faculty from all the campuses have a vote on who it is, right? Or input on who that
Yes.
person is that represents them, because I think that is important, that like everybody from all the schools have an input on who that one or maybe even 2 people is.
An
I don't
alternate,
know.
maybe, like a
Like,
primary and alternate.
yeah.
So like the one thing I wanted to touch base on was you said something about having be able to speak in that anonymously, and I was like, I think that's the key point to this, is that if they put out a survey, it needs to be able to be just their survey, and it's brought to us on a completely, here's the numbers, that's it, like, basis. So I just want to make sure that's ensured to the teachers and to the staff.
Perhaps each school could have their own person and one collective representative checks base with them. You know, that way, each school can streamline it, and then whoever they select to sit in with us, just checks base with.
Feels like a mini board meeting, like a staff board meeting, like one from
Whatever
Barnard.
we do, I want to hear their voices. I do not want to extend this meeting.
No, I'm just saying, like, you're saying, like, the teachers would have a board, so like, Barnard would have a representative.
Yeah, I just meant like, you know,
Oxford,
in Barnard
the
has
high
that
school.
one person and they go to in Barnard.
Yeah,
Same
and
with the
they,
school, they all talk to the one
Right.
representative, you know.
so same idea as what we're talking about here on the board.
Carrie, do you need a vote coming out of this, or is it pretty clear that?
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on this. I do feel strongly that the support staff should have a voice as well. So I would like to make sure you're in agreement as a board that we want not just the teachers, but also the support staff to feel that they have a voice, because I think they sometimes get lost and they see, you know, the situation differently from a teacher view. All right, so we seem to be in agreement that we want to have these folks be represented and at our board meetings. And, you know, I think we can give it back to them to let them decide their process and bring us the names.
That sounds good. You mentioned 2 other report outs though that are separate from faculty and staff. You mentioned the legislative update.
Yeah.
And given everything that's going on, I think that's critical.
Yeah.
It's really hard to keep up with. I don't know how many people have read the 192-page bill that's proposed, besides Sherry. And
Sherry, that's a given.
I think the facilities update, I think still needs to come through buildings and grounds. I wouldn't make it
Yeah.
separate. But,
Okay.
but I think we need something similar to what we're talking about here for the teachers, which is like, can we get like a suggestions box in each campus where people could like just drop in an anonymous, like, we really could use, you know, whatever, better
Working pens.
heat or working pen.
Yeah, as I say, that'll work.
That's our orderer back there. Please do not work.
I don't know if that, so I'll leave that for Buildings and Grounds Committee. I mean, I'm coming off of that committee, but should we just have like a comment box on facilities?
So something that we've had like a tech ticket, so there's a way for collecting information digitally so that, I know RAF has a really great system to get information around technology, and maybe it's something similar for facilities.
I mean, I understand a tech ticket, but like, I think what you're saying is that there would be like no way of knowing who put, and that's kind of the key to this, is that there's no way. There's no way of knowing
Yeah.
who put it in? Okay, that was my
Yeah,
question.
And that's gonna be more anonymous in our smaller schools.
Than an
Recognizing
actual
that
like
handwriting,
putting
like
handwritten thing in.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
I
didn't
agree.
know how the tech ticket works. so
Anonymity.
I appreciate that explanation, that it didn't have a trace.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so it sounds like we have some good ideas rolling, and Buildings and Grounds can take that up in their meeting around the facility situation. All right, are we ready to move on? Yes, okay, good. Finance Committee, is there a report from Finance tonight?
Speak on it, since I think I'm the only one, a number of Laura's on there or not. So everybody knows that we passed the budget. I think it was the 6th or the 7th iteration this year. And yeah, thank you so much to this board and everybody in Jim, everybody who worked on the Finance Committee, either directly or indirectly, and all of the communities for supporting us again this year. It was a tricky year. We had to navigate some new dynamics with that reinstitution of the excess spending limit, and we did it successfully. And it was no easy feat. So thank you, everybody, for your input and support.
All right, thank you. Elliot for policy.
Yep, so we have three policies for the first reading. Those are all from the VSBA, Vermont School Board Association. One of them is on security cameras, just basically some guidelines on the use of them and rules about them. So I guess I'll ask for that a motion to move it for a second reading next, unless there's any questions, for a second reading next month on the security cameras.
I'll make a motion to
One second.
move that to next month. Second reading.
All in favor of moving it forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. The next one are, the next two are actually, I'm sorry.
Gotta hold for, ask for abstention as well.
Didn't that, yes, he abstained from the security cameras. Okay, good, thank you. The next one?
Okay, next one, actually, the next two are just updates to ones that we have. So D24 is special education, just an update, some wording, to be honest with you. So I'll put those two together. F24, prevention of conflict of interest, again, some wording updates from VSBA, so I would ask for those two together, if we could just move them on to the second reading next month.
I'll make a motion to move D24 and F24 to second reading.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of moving those forward, please say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, those have passed. Thank you. And for adoption, Elliot.
Okay, so this is for adoption. Again, this is on student activities, clubs and athletics. We have presented this 3 times. We did just get some feedback, and I just wanted to go over a few things before I would like it to get adopted, but I just want to clarify a few things. And we've got people here. So one question we had is, are there any sports that are sort of on the cutting block that would be right now if we cut it using these rules? I just will ask Jim and
Yeah,
Sherry.
and Jim gave you the data.
So just to clarify, none right now, they're on the borderline, correct? I mean,
There's none right now because it requires 3 years data. We only have 2.
okay,
But we have 2 sports that have had a year with 10 students. And we have 3 with under 15 students. So there are 3 that are potentially at risk in a year.
Okay.
Can you tell us
Which three are those? Sorry.
Isn't baseball one?
When you look at, Rav's response or my response.
Yeah. I think it was,
Golf.
2-year, yeah, golf and alpine. Alpine, golf had 2 as a 2-year average, I had 10 as a 2-year average, and alpine, for 2-year average is 12. And just to tell you the trend, in golf, it was 8 in 2024 and 12 in 2025, and alpine was 14 in 24 and 10 in 25. So, nothing.
Is there a third one?
Yeah, it's like 3.
I thought you said 3, I'm sorry.
115, was there 115 as well?
I don't have that one.
I don't have it off the top of my head either.
Yeah.
And I don't have the 2-year history on it, just the 1 year where they were at 14.
So they would be good to continue as a sport next season. At that point, there would need to be either some ensurement that the students are staying on the team or some recruitment of new athletes. If we pass this, it wouldn't cut them from having sports next year because we need 3 years of data. Right.
I believe. Yes. And the other thing, and this is, so there's a stipulation here that director must confirm by June 1st, the coaches. And thank you for bringing it up, but apparently the coaches are sort of named on a sort of staggered basis anyway. So there's no year where on June 1st, all the coaches for the whole year would be named. So I would propose if we could do a friendly amendment to this, that we say plans for certified coaching and supervision are in place. Just basically to say that, on a rolling basis, but we can't obviously name the coaches that we would. I mean, Jim just pointed out, we just got the spring coaches names recently.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to ever have them. So probably, it's an error on our part to have this written this way. So we would like it to be plans for certified coaching. I don't know.
What page is that? And what's that?
Okay, it's on the, it's under the first
Under sponsorship.
sponsorship.
And you want to change it in two places?
Yeah, certified, well, or plans, right, also one for the club sports.
Yeah.
For the club sports, so is that, Raina, a friendly enough amendment that we wouldn't have to go back to the drawing board on this?
It doesn't. It's hard to say because you're changing part of the intent. So you're the board, you can make the decision.
I understand the dynamic of the timing of it, and also what does it look like if there's a sport that's officially a sport that plans to have a coach and then doesn't? Have we already invested money in the sport? Has there been a schedule made? Don't know.
I mean,
I don't know is the option.
no, but I think, it's our fault, but writing this the way we did in the first place, it would have been unrealistic no matter what we did to be able to say on June 1st that we're gonna have the whole year's coaches. Selected out and, signed on the, signed, so.
Yeah.
Do you want 3 deadlines, one for fall, winter, and spring? No.
I think.
I think plans for makes sense. I mean, it gives you some.
Heather has her. Heather?
I just wanted to be part of the discussion. Are we open for discussion?
Yes.
Great. I know a lot of work has gone into the creation of this. I just want to share that I don't support this as a policy. I believe this should be a procedure under an executive limitation. I understand why these limitations are important, and I really think it's procedural. Once it's a policy, no exceptions can be made. So even if there's a time when the board and the superintendent wanted to make an exception, it can't be done. It's my opinion, this is a procedure and not a policy. Thank you.
I have a question, just Heather, when you say it could never be undone because it's a policy, I mean, if the administration was about to cut a sport because of this policy and the kids showed up at our board meeting and said, we'd like to have our sport, and the board voted, you can have your sport. I mean, wouldn't that override the policy? I'm just, the premise of your statement, I just want to make sure I understand the governance here.
I didn't mean to say it could never be undone. I meant quickly, like with alacrity. It would take, as you said, a vote of the board. Whereas typically decisions like those, when they're left to the superintendent, have it just seems to me that the board is getting into school management, and we're supposed to make sure schools are run well. We're not supposed to say how it's run. I think the board is overstepping. But this was created before I was on the board, and so I will just, I'm not going to make it my my box, to stand on.
Oh, sorry, Sherry.
Good other comment?
Can I speak as,
Yes,
so
please.
in terms of this policy, I find why I feel that it is board jurisdiction is because this is such an allocation of resource and there's an interface between community and the school. So how we make decisions, part of our identity as a district is that we offer a rich after-school program, whether it's sports or theater or music. And as we look at how we use resources, which was really challenging this year, sports specifically can have it's beyond the scope of a school day. And so I've asked for guidance around how do I make these decisions? Previously, there was a practice at the high school that kind of got lost when we merged as a district, but how do we make these decisions? So I did ask as a superintendent, greater guidance and input from the board around that process. And that's why Elliot and the team have been working on this for almost 2 years now. This is not easy. This is not, and I think about a previous decision, for example, preschool students on the school bus. That could have been made by the superintendent, but it really had a great deal of board input and decision-making because it had so many different impacts. For me, it's similar. This is not an easy decision, and I really needed to have the support and full understanding of the board when we come to this point. So it is something that I asked for and went to policy to say, give me more information, give me something to work from. I don't need total detail, but I'll tell you in terms of, for example, preschool riding the bus, I've used the board decision and their thoughtfulness in making that determination around making decisions. So there's times where I think the superintendent asked for some guidance. This is a situation where I did ask for guidance in terms of this, and I think it's been gray for a long period of time, and I don't think that's been helpful. So this clarity in terms of how do we make decisions about athletics, and in some cases our other co-curricular activities has been something that I've searched for. So it's kind of the origin.
I'll just say I'm new to the policy, just skimming over it over Matt's shoulder here. I agree that if sports get to a point where they're not like sustainable, there needs to be things that go into place to make them more sustainable. But I think you need to also think about the people that are losing access to the sport, because when rumors started buzzing around about golf getting cut, there was a good community of kids who were like, no, this can't happen. I noticed some people were like emailing a professional golf coach or something to get them to do a club. So there's definitely real voices involved here that need to be brought to the table. But I do support the policy.
Josh?
So I'm gonna question, just because of the situation that happened last year, which is that we ended up with no middle school football team. With kids that had no idea what the rules were gonna be, who the coach was gonna be going into middle school football. And having coached that team the year before as an assistant coach, it was kind of questionable why there was no option to move forward into the head coach of that position to make sure that the program continued to run. And so I'm just questioning how this policy is going to affect to make sure that we don't lose interest in sports, like certain sports or sports fall to the side because you have a low attendance 1 year.
And I think it's the 3-year average piece, and I'm excited by what
Yeah.
Joaquin said, but I mean, we used to have, there was a strong, at the Woodstock Inn, youth golf program that really fed into, my son played on the golf team. But that when we start to lose, and I see the work that Bryce has put into and making sure that we have a youth baseball teams. I think that's really our youth rec teams are really what's helped support it. We used to have a really strong youth football team
Right.
that really fed into that. And so part of that is sharing the responsibility with our communities to make sure we have really strong youth sports. And I think Bryce is an example of that.
I just wanna make sure that like, you know, a sport, because if you go a year without a sport at all, which is what happened last fall, that you end up with lower attendance this year because the kids don't even know if it's available. And especially summer sports that start in the fall because they've been off all summer long. So I think that's a position that should be filled before the school year ends, and we have how we do fall sports when you're in the high school. With the spring meeting for football is.
And I can share that with Orion. But yeah.
Matt?
So the way this is written, it doesn't even apply to middle school.
Okay.
It refers only to varsity and junior varsity, but that does open up the question, does this policy govern middle school in any way? Does it govern, I mean, I guess we do rec center for everything else before middle school, but, it also leaves it kind of vague as to, like, do you apply this to the junior varsity team? Like, so if one year you have 10 girls on the basketball team and they don't even field the JV team because they only got 10, and so they just field the varsity team. Are you then counting like an average of how many JV kids were on it the year before and putting a 0 in the JV team? Like, is this going to be used to justify whether you can have both a varsity and JV team, or is this just the sport at the high school level? That's a question.
Right, so that happened this year. There's no JV girls basketball. There's just varsity.
And it happens with
So for
softball.
2025 is at a 0, or 2024 season at a 0 for the 3-year average, which is gonna make it very difficult, even if we have a decent number next year, to keep the average passable, I guess.
For JV, yeah, that's what you're saying.
So, yeah, does this just apply to the sport as a program? Like you need to have at least 10 average athletes, and that could be a combination of JV and varsity? Does that need to be clarified?
So, yeah, can I just say, I mean, I think Heather was on something with the way she said it, because then becomes a procedure, not a policy, so there's every situation gets a little bit different, like if you're looking at it from a superintendent standpoint. Yeah, JV had 0 for basketball for girls basketball, but the team still had 10, so next year if they end up with 17 and they have enough to do 2 teams. It doesn't kill the JV average because there wasn't one this year. And you can make that decision with the board again, but I see where she's going with that.
I see a hand up for somebody who says iPhone. I don't know who you are. Could you identify yourself?
Their board member?
Hi, this is Coach Ramsey, we're out from
Ramsey,
Woodstock. How you doing?
Ramsey, I'm sorry. Right now it's a board discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can save that for public comment, though.
I am so sorry.
It's okay. We just,
All right.
that's why we ask you to put your name on there.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Corinne?
From what I remember, or I didn't look at this in the last month, but I think that it's the numbers applied to the program as a whole, and whether or not there was a JV coach, an additional, the number of coaches that then would be staffed for the team depended on the numbers within the program and how that was divided out, whether that was just a coach, an assistant coach, or a coach and a JV coach. What maybe didn't matter as much, but am I right, Elliot, that it was
That's correct. I think this was really.
numbers?
I see that on here, but the staffing doesn't really work for sports that don't require a lot of players, so if you wanted to have a coach for JV girls and a coach for varsity girls basketball, according to this, you would need 19 players for one coach, and then for every additional 20 players, you could add another coach. I don't know if I'm reading this correctly. You need like 39 girls to have a varsity coach and a JV coach, but really, you only need like 16 girls to have a varsity and a JV team, or maybe 20. So I don't know if this really works for that.
Bob,
Yeah, I'd have to come down on the side of Heather on this one. Even this discussion about how does it work and do you need another coach and this whole thing has nothing to do with what we should be doing as a board. This is administrative. The administration can still use the same guidelines, and if they continue to run too many sports that have too few people in them, when budget time comes around, the board's going to take them to task and say, hey, you got to cut 10% more off this. I think this should be a procedure, not a policy. And then give the administration the latitude to make these decisions on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. Thank you.
it sounds to
Dan?
me like we're not ready to vote on it tonight, and I think we should just finish the discussion. And if you have thoughts you want to send to the policy committee, and please reread it so that you're clear about what you're not clear about. And send that information to the policy to committee to continue discussion, because it's clear we're not ready to take a vote. Is that fair?
Yeah, if we can continue the discussion, I did have one more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
couple-
wanted
so-
to say, just to be clear.
So, yeah, Anna, then
Yeah,
Sam, then,
well, I hear Heather's concern and I don't disagree with it. We're hearing our administrative leadership say that they want more support. And while this may not have to do within the building schooling, we do write the budget that will support these sports. And I do think that we should have this guidance in place.
yeah.
Follow up to that, to what Anna just said is, I don't even know if it's within the board's purview to vote on it as like an approved and board supported procedure rather than policy. I don't remember that ever happening before, or whether or not that would be something that, because there is, and I think it's worth having, I looked to see if we had it in the, I think it is worth noting that there is a policy that is put out by the VSBA on this. It is just not as comprehensive as this is. I personally have also thought this, and I've spoken, said that in the policy meetings, Elliot, as we know that this is in-depthly more procedural than is what is most of our policies, which makes me uncomfortable. I know we've been working on it for a long time. I don't know if it's worth having the policy like the VSBA has put out, with then this being a recommended procedure by the board to where then Sherry's feeling like she's getting a little bit more board support, but it's not necessarily a policy. I'm not even sure that's possible. That's my first point. And then my second thing is to say is I know that it's not usual practice, but I would love to open to get Coach Ramsey's feedback on this before we vote on it. So it doesn't sound like we are voting on it, so that's good, but I would love to hear his feedback on this policy before we.
And and the reason why this is such a delicate subject, as
Yeah.
you saw when we decided to reduce the sports budget or co-curriculars by 10%. So the more, and you can see, this is really hard stuff. This is not easy. And so that administration, and I won't be here forever, I know that really makes some people sad, but having some guidance around this, where again, you're representing 7 different communities, you are living in these spaces, and many of you are coaches are doing that work. you don't want an arbitrary decision, you want a decision that's based on some very specific guidelines. So that it isn't, Sherry doesn't, or Sherry, you know what I mean, or the superintendent, or that principal. So the more you can give guidance, and it maybe not to this extent, that it's a decision when and if it happens, that has a support of your representation in each of your communities. That's one of the pieces here. This is really hard stuff. When it's hard stuff, it was like the bus rules. It came to the board so that we all had the same message. So that's why.
Matt?
I know this was, created with the best intent, and I hear Sherry's reasons for why we should have it. But I'm just gonna keep sharing my thoughts as I've spent time on it. So, having to establish an average over 3 years to go from club to a school-sponsored sport, if you think about what that implies, like if we have 11 girls or boys, whatever, that want to start a volleyball team, and it's a VPA sport, and they have a coach. They won't even be able to play against other schools that are holding VPA sanctioned. They'll be like a club, and I don't even think they'll be able to play. And to establish a 3-year track record, their high school career will be over. Like, if they came in as a freshman, they won't be able to have a varsity team till they're a senior. So I'm struggling with, like, how you could get a program like that off the ground. It's sort of chicken or the egg. You'd sit there going, well, we'd have to have a club for 3 years before we could have a varsity, and then you might lose interest. Like, so I that one's tough. And then the other piece is, it says that the activities and athletic budget shall not exceed 7.5% of our annual budget. And, you know, this policy has changed a little bit. It started out as extracurriculars and athletics, but as I read it, it now seems to only talk about athletics. But I was told that this 7.5% counts extracurriculars and athletics. So does that include theater? Does that include outdoors club? Does that include Spanish club? Does that include chess club? And if it does, then where are all the rules that decide whether or not you can have those clubs? So I have a lot of questions as I read this, and I know we spent a lot of time on it, but it's a tough one.
Can I make a motion to, with the board, supporting the policy committee, send it back for some additional edits or maybe drawing back for less descriptive requirements and adding in more flexibility? I'm sorry.
We make a motion. Well, you can.
Well, no, it sounds like there's more discussion.
Well, I just want to make a motion that we hear Ramsey as a long tenured coach. If that's something we can make a motion to let him speak at this time, just because we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna send, it sounds like Elliot, to figure out some date changes. It might not be a bad idea to get some insight from.
And when something's on the agenda, we have faculty who speak up, right? I mean.
I second the motion.
We have a motion.
Do we vote on
I'm not
that?
sure I'm not sure what you're asking for.
The motion is to have, Coach Ramsey speak now on on his opinion of this policy while he's in attendance to the meeting, rather than waiting to public comment.
Okay, I just before we do that, I think it's really important, again, that people should read these policies and write their questions down and send them to policy before we get to the final reading, because it's been going on, and they've brought it back several times to rework according to the feedback received and best guidance they got from Sherry and the athletic director. So I think, in deference to them and the work they've done, I think it's really important that if we're going to, at the last minute, say, no, we've got all these questions, we should have had these questions before this time. I'm just saying that as a, I feel kind of sorry for them, I guess.
Well,
I mean, I'm fine with letting Ramsey talk now, but then any other coach could now come forward, any other sponsor of a club. They all have their reasons for why they want their sport to continue. Of course, no one wants to be cutting things, but and Ramsey could speak as well during the public comment, which should be happening very soon. So I think I'd rather he wait till the public comment, because we're just about at the end of the agenda. And
But
then
I think it's gonna influence our vote. It's gonna influence my vote I would like to.
I'd
Okay,
like to hear.
all right. I don't think we're gonna be voting tonight.
Motion in
Nate.
a second.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Ramsey, you may speak.
Hi, thank you for letting me on, and I do apologize for jumping in earlier. Not very tech savvy and kind of, I think I'm kind of late to the game here in terms of the policy, and kind of do agree with whoever suggested reading over the policy and maybe coming back to it later on. But I hear a lot of stuff being talked about with all the sports, and it doesn't seem like everybody in the room has a good understanding of how each and every sport works. When we talk about cutting sports, and I can speak to my sport, for example, you know, there are many years we don't have a JV team or a full JV team, but we do have the opportunity to play 6-man football or 8-man football so that those younger kids can play. And I think other sports like hockey and lacrosse and bigger sports maybe have those same opportunities. So to just say that, you know, if there's no JV sport or no whatever, and this year, you know, listening to you guys talk about the middle school program, you know, I've been involved in football here for over 30 years as a player, as an assistant coach, and now a head coach. It's never happened, and it was kind of a transitional thing between 80s that kind of helped allow it to happen. And so there's a lot that goes into all the sports that go on. And Woodstock is such a sports traditionally is so big at Woodstock and plays such a vital role in every kid's experience at Woodstock that I think everybody needs to know every little detail before voting on too much stuff involving sports. You know, the girls basketball team, for example, is going through a transition. You know, my middle school program is going through a transition. I just think you guys really want to know everything about everything before you start taking things away. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that 2 cents in before anything was voted to get cut, or I don't even know what I missed, to be honest with you, but I do know some of the things that I'm hearing. Some of them aren't really true. So yeah.
Ramsey, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Have you been set this policy by anyone to review? Like, have you read it and were you sent it in advance to review by any like by Orion or anyone?
No, this is the first I'm hearing of it. I mean, I thought I was just tuning into a board meeting just to listen to the board meeting. I didn't know there was going to be anything about sports and.
So this policy has been being worked on for the last like 2 years. And I'm on policy and we've been asking for input the whole time from the athletic directors. We've had different athletic directors since it started being written. And I've been asking as on the policy committee if we could be getting more feedback from coaches and the athletic director on this policy. And I felt like we haven't gotten enough.
No, and listen, if I am interrupting a very long board meeting with my opinion, I do apologize. I will say, we transition between ADs quite often around here, and Orion has come in and done a great job and probably needs to be looped into the right process for this, and he certainly should be involved in this. I wish he was at this meeting with you right now so he could give you guys answers to questions that maybe you might have.
Yeah, I think that be in attendance when we vote on this to answer some of these questions.
And I'll leave you with this because I know you guys have a lot to do and you guys have put a lot of time in, and I don't want to keep you any longer than necessary. This community is there's not a lot of things for kids to do. Sports plays such a vital role in the lives of kids in this community, starting from a very young age. That is really all they have to do other than hike and ski You know, there's no bowling alleys, there's no roller skating rinks, there's no, you know, video game places, there's no place to go shoot pool or play ping pong, or there's nothing for kids, absolutely nothing. Our kids have sports, and they have theater, and they have art, and they have music. This is all their extracurricular activities is what they have to do. And they invest their time into whatever love that they whatever they fall in love with, whether it's sports or theater or whatever. But that's all they have. So if we start taking things away, I don't, you know, no matter how poorly a program is doing, our first thought should be how do we revive it, not how do we cut it. So that's just that's my opinion. I hope I haven't taken up too much of you guys' time and have been helpful in some way. So thank you.
Thank you, Ramsey. I'm gonna throw this back to Elliot and ask Elliot what.
So just
to
a
do.
couple of things. One is, so if we make this a procedure, I don't think it gets voted on by the board because I don't think there's any distinction between that and a policy. Am I correct? Okay, so, and that's one idea. And the other question, I actually have a question for Heather, because I think this came up and it was involved with you withdrawing from the committee, because I think we have a different idea of what our governance is. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna just mention it and you can tell me if I'm wrong. So there is a thing that the VSBA puts out called policy governance, which is actually a trademarked idea that was creating by John and Miriam Carter. And I don't believe that we follow it. Is that correct? We do not follow, it's based on giving the administration, just voting for the administration and having the administration do a lot of things by procedures. And from what I understand, because the question is, do we want to get extra training and everything? I've talked to Carrie about it. And Heather, am I mistaken that we do not follow the precepts of it? And I don't want to, but is that true that many of our policies probably get too in the weeds? Is that correct?
I can't judge that alone. That would be a collaborative assessment of your work. I do think that policy governance was adopted by the board, and to what level currently we're functioning under that doesn't mean we are or we aren't. It's like, where are we? And I want to stand by what I said. While I think it's fine to have a policy that governs fiscal responsibility as connected to extracurriculars, getting deep down into the procedure is not what boards do. Even if you look at the state policy on HHB, harassment, hazing, and bullying, there's an attached procedure. The same with Title IX against sexual harassment in all its forms. There's a policy and a procedure. And what that does is it gives alacrity to the superintendent to change the people's named in the procedure. So in the procedure, if it says, in the case of an HHB, contact principal, principal name, principal email, principal phone number, the procedure can be changed at any time by the superintendent in response to critical need. Whereas a policy needs to be vetted by the board over multiple months and then voted on. So however you identify as a board, you really need to consider how much procedure you punch into a policy. Thank you.
I guess I would ask the board, what do they want? Because I think we have been working on this for over 2 years. And if we don't want it, that's fine. And we want to just leave it for procedure, it has been the direction we've been going, but we can go that way. Because it sounds like on one hand, we're asking to get more into the weeds, and the other hand, we're saying, just leave it as procedure. So I don't know if we need a blanket, policy saying, I mean, your point about the ones from the VSBA, they were hobbled together from 3 different policies that were, and it was obviously they literally cut and pasted 3 policies. It didn't have anything to do with each other into one policy. So we can abandon this, but I mean, just sending it back to us,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to have clear direction. If we're
Yes.
gonna send it back to us, it's
Well, it
fine.
sounds like there's space for athletic director and coaches to provide some feedback on it.
You're getting more into, you're getting more into the weeds of
Yeah.
trying to put together, rules, and which is what we were asked to do.
Right, and the principal and Tom Emery and Orion were part of the conversation, is my
Yeah, I mean,
understanding.
this was finally signed off, whether it was, I don't know what levels it went to be signed off, we didn't just. So, I don't mean to put everything on the spot, but I don't, just to say, come back to us. I don't know where you want us to do, I mean,
I think, yeah, policy has kind of had a wall with us.
that's
Yeah,
right.
I will say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's why I was hoping that there'd be a
would
more
say
collective
that-
effort to help y'all
Yeah,
with the guidance on, drawing it back, so we're not so
I
prescribed.
mean, what are the implications if you leave it at just the way it is, as a procedure, I mean.
Well, I'm hearing that our superintendent wants our support and.
yes,
And from what I understand, the point of the board is Sherry, that we are supposed to direct her and support her and all that. So if she's asking for support, I feel like we need to give it. So I feel like we have to have a policy, whether that means that we remove some of the more technical aspects and make them suggestions. I don't know where that goes, but I feel like we have to do something.
I think that's been the challenge, is that Sherry really feels she needs the support and a policy around this. And we're having a hard time, like,
We want to do it really well.
and do it well, but it then gets into the procedural thing, weeds, which personally, Elliot has just brought this up, the training. I've actually been on the board on policy now since when Dan French, who was the
Secretary of Ed.
Secretary of Ed, before he was Secretary of Ed, actually came and taught us on policy and like helped when the board first became unified to teach us how to be a policy driven board and what those kind of policies should look like. And so I was, when he did that, on policy at that time, and one of the things he really drove home a lot was policies that don't get into the weeds and don't get into procedure. And so that's why I've had a lot of issues weighing that with this policy of him saying that and this policy feeling that way, and then also Sherry feeling like she needs something.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard.
This, as you can see, this is a really hard issue. This is not some of the other things that we write procedure on. We can write procedure on emergency operations, we can write procedure, but anything having to do with co-curriculars, whether it's theory, it would just be as lively as about, but it really is, what is this consensus as representative of your communities feel like a fair practice is when we talk about, because we had previously, how do we add teams? That kind of got lost in the merge. Snowboarding was one of the teams that was for 5 years, a team sport and not a varsity sport. Mountain biking went that route, but that was never codified about how does that decision get made. And so as the representative of our communities on such a hot button issue that has so much passion around it, I think leading an administrator, whether it's a principal or superintendent, and don't make it about Sherry, it's really hard. And the parallel is pre-K transportation. That was a 2-year conversation before we landed on that policy, and it's been really important to have that as part of the policy. So it's not often that I ask for clarity, but this is one place where we all know and live in these communities. What is your take on this? And I feel for Elliot. They have worked on this for 2 years, and it's a hard one. I think what Carrie said is step back, look at the policy, talk to your communities, what can we do? And I don't think that until Elliot and the policy committee gets that clarity from the board, will they know how to act. I don't think at 8:30 tonight, we can make that decision.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to take a breath. It's what I'm good at knowing when it's time to take a breath. This is the time. And I think that if you could put your ideas and thoughts down and get them to Elliot, and then people look at that. I know that Tom Emery, who's been a coach of about just about every sport, was very involved. Orion bringing his expertise from his previous community, you know, same as with Aaron, there's been input and I know from policy, they tried to get even more coaches' input. Coaches are volunteers and they work really hard coming in and having, but you know, that's why Tom was tapped and Orion and others within, you know, and we have a lot of coaches who are part of the faculty that were kind of get input, but each will bring a unique perspective and we have to get to a point about what isn't specific to an individual sport, but what are some pieces that we can all be consensus on, and then we can go for procedures there, but I would say take a breath, figure it out.
All right. I don't think we're ready to vote.
So
All right.
what board has been given direction to really actually come back with some like written down feedback and get other coaches from your communities to look at this. And give
I'm
us
gonna
their
just, so our meeting is next week because it's usually 2 weeks from, and I'll just add it to the agenda as we will discuss it briefly. We're not gonna get into the rewriting of it. We will
No,
discuss input that we get from you
yeah,
and go from there.
and please attend.
And attend.
Yay.
All right. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right, buildings and grounds. Do you have a
Yeah,
report?
yep. We did meet, it was brought to our attention that the theater curtains may need to be treated with a fire retardant or replaced altogether. We didn't make a decision, Joe just kind of laid out, sort of the expense if you treat versus if you buy new. We talked about status of heat in the buildings, the sped classroom is back online, we still need to replace some valves at West. Found another uncontrolled valve in the library ceiling. We addressed the student complaints and we're looking into solutions with Alliance to provide feedback. I don't know if we have it ready for this meeting.
Sure, I can speak briefly to it.
Okay.
We went through some of the univent heaters up there. Again, 90% of the univent heaters in that school have been replaced. We're trying to determine what fan speed we can run those at and not risk freezing coils, because that's the issue we've had when folks had access to turning the units on and off. Over the past 3 years, I think we froze at least 3 or 4 coils. They cost us $2,500 a piece and 10 to 12 weeks to get them. So currently, we've dropped the fan speed on a majority of those UVs to about 40%. We're going to monitor that and see how it works. There's no way for us to physically turn off the fans. We need to have air moving constantly for CO2 levels. And I'll continue to monitor it, and I'll let you guys know if we can drop it even more.
Thank you very much. So that's a really positive update, because when we all met as a board, it sounded like you couldn't change the fan speed at all. And we know that it continues to blow air even after it hits the temperature in the room, and that air feels cold to kids because that's one of the things that changes your air temperature, that's convection. So it feels cold even though the room's actually at the right temperature. And they're loud, and we tried to hold our financial information meeting in the library, and this little owl couldn't hear us because it only heard the univent heater.
Those are 2 old univent heaters.
Are those old ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the few, we probably have 5 or 6 that we haven't changed out there, but that's a great point to make. Like I said, 90% of them have been changed, and for 50 plus years, it was extremely loud in that building. It's definitely lower than it's been.
Great. So hopefully we'll get, if we hear nothing, that's really good news. If we hear more complaints, then the 40% didn't do it. I'll move on to the gym roof. I've talked about this at a full board meeting before. We had an engineering report done that just basically said that the roof's no longer to code. If you would have built the gym today, you would have had to have stronger beams for the weight on the roof from snow. So a number of things were done to mitigate that. They repointed all the cinder blocks, repainted them, they're monitoring them, but we also got quotes to actually reinforce the beams. And they came in quite expensive, a lot more than expected. And so There's been another solution proposed that, we haven't pulled the trigger on, but you can install, a roof, monitoring system that will actually measure stress on those beams. And other schools have done this where they have similar situations as we do. And it will just tell you if you're getting to a point of, I don't know, what would you call it, like,
The terminology is deflection.
deflect?
So, yep, so it's 24 hours monitoring. We actually mount them on the beams, so it'll tell us if there's any movement in those beams. It'll give us a wealth of data too, to let us know if we really do have issues with that roof. Just because we're out of code doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna meet the threshold of the roof collapsing or anything like that. But this might be a cost-effective way for us to follow up.
If you had a big snowstorm though, with a lot on there all at once, couldn't it go from being sort of okay to failure?
Very much so. Yep.
But it would be like a warning system.
So it would let us know as we incrementally met that threshold where we had to do something, we would do something. Yep, we'd shut the gym down, try to remove smoke if possibly could. But this seems like the most practical way to move forward. The lowest proposal I had was 250,000 and the highest was 600 to reinforce the roof.
And how much is the monitoring system?
50,000. And there's a maintenance fee of about $2,000 a year. They come back and recalibrate it and assure that it's functioning properly. And like I said, the key is it's gathering data 24/7, so that a year or 2, 3 years down the line, we can have an engineer look at this again and see if we're even approaching those thresholds that weren't closing down the gym or anything like that.
Yeah, we supported it as a committee just because there's so much uncertainty around what are the implications of not being to today's code? Does that mean that it's unsafe, or does that just mean it's not today's code? Because it's been,
There's been a lot of community talk around it too. I mean, I will just say that, there's been a few Facebook posts that talk, that their talking point is the concern over the gym's roof. So I think having something would go along.
just finishing out the report, we're finishing everything in the fiscal year 2025 budget. We even brought some things in that we could spend this year to take pressure off of next year. And we're gonna come back to the board with a full capital investment plan on through 2030. And that the proposal was to come to the May or June board meeting with that longer term plan. That's all we had.
All right, thank you, Matt. Any working group updates? Okay,
The negotiations team continues to meet with the support staff union and working on that, and we keep tentatively agreeing on more things. So that's moving along.
all right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The February 24th special meeting and the February 3rd regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good, thank you. We will now move into the second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
I would just like to say, I think we can remove the parenthetical that says when in-person meetings are resumed. I feel like they've resumed, so.
I'll speak as a public member, even though I know I'm on the board. And I'm just really speaking to all of my fellow board members. If you haven't been reading deeply the details of what's going on with the state proposal, please do. I mean, if you read it, we may not have a high school. I mean, if we may not have a middle school. If you read it carefully and look at like what they could do with that proposal, I just think we have to advocate for how incredible our high school is, and Bryce has left. But some of that policy is like tail wagging the dog. It's like, oh, we're gonna move it to places with just a tech center. Well, should we really make a decision on just a tech center alone, or should you look at the fact that we have a school like this that has the sports that we have, that has the AP classes that we have, that has the college placement that we have? So, board members, this policy is, it's like massive change. And what I've heard is that the block grants are, I mean, I like elements that we'd have one tax rate, no matter what, everyone can understand your tax rate. And it actually will get more money from second homeowners. But if we just accepted the block grant that they proposed, I think is it 20%?
About $4,000 a student, or about $4 million.
4 million out of our 30 million budget.
Yeah, we'd have to cut.
Yep.
I agree,
this-
Matt.
My public comment is just, this is like an inflection, like if that policy goes forward and is passed into law, it's going to like come down to this board who are serving here tonight to determine whether we really have a school, because they're gonna start consolidating schools in, I think, the third year of the law. If it were to pass this year, it would be like 3 years later, they would start closing schools.
I just want to make a comment, just on the same vein, is that the VSBA actually had a noontime webinar the other day. I don't know if any of you caught it. It was actually with two legislators and one from the Ways and Means. I forgot who they were, but it was actually really informative, and you can go on, it's recorded, you can take a look at it. I mean, they are, you know, basically it's not going forward, it's, you know, there is some suggestions in terms of, you know, what will happen. So I mean, it's not. Yeah.
Add-on comment.
Yeah.
I think it only adds to the importance of having a superintendent like we do. Within Sherry, who is on how many state level boards?
A number.
A large number. And is very tied in on the state level and advocating for our school, and has been for decades. I just think that that's policy adds to the importance of the work that she does. And continues to do on the state level. Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, I agree with all that. You know, there's many things coming out. Some of them are confusing, they clash against each other. Everyone has their own view on this, but educate yourself through the things that the VSBA sends to all of us, and just take the time and read one article at a time to see where the trend is, because it's definitely going to be changing, and it's going to take voices like ours to speak up and say what we think, what we agree with, what we disagree with. And the more public input that the legislators get, the more they have to think about what they're really moving forward with. So thank you.
Would you mind sharing a link to that video that we were just talking about? I'd love to, I
mean, today.
have it playing in the background while I cook dinner sometime.
Yeah, the VSBA update today was really important. There was stuff on the draft infrastructure bill. There are lots of pieces of legislation. It's really the go-to and summary of all the important articles that are out there. The SBA is doing a really great job of getting that
This
information
is the
out.
new bill on the school fund, construction fund.
Right.
Which is, it's a good read. It's only 4 pages. It's not too bad.
Matt, thank you for saying.
Last 4 pages especially.
All right. Are we ready to move into public comment? If there's anyone else I'm sorry, we're already in it right now. Is there anyone else? For public?
Yes.
I heard when you were going over committees about the new bill committee and what that looks like for this round. Who are the representatives on that? I'm pretty sure you guys spoke about that.
Yes.
John, Ryan.
I'm on the committee. I don't know the rules about public comment. We're not typically supposed to respond, but I'm happy to. I don't think we're doing crap with it for now.
Okay, I just want to know who the members were.
Oh, she was asking for the numbers there.
And Bob is.
Well, the people, I can tell you who volunteered. Sam, Ryan, Josh, and Joaquin have volunteered to be part of that committee.
No, that's a different one.
Oh, which one are you talking about?
That's the community engagement one. She's talking about the new build.
New build.
The new build working committee. Just want to make sure, because I did not volunteer for that.
No.
The new build is Ryan, John, and Bob, correct?
It was Ben, he's off.
Oh, okay, so it's now. I think the reason, as Ryan said so eloquently, there's not been crap done with it is because on the state level, the funding and has been, the way that was ran changed, right?
It hasn't been that since June year ago.
Yeah, because the state changed it so that any kind of bond would then.
Count against your education
yeah, count
spending
against
and put you into penalty and make you pay 2-for-1 on taxes.
What he said.
Yep. Lots. of money
Okay.
to-
I think Anna also volunteered for that committee.
Yeah, if stuff starts happening and they need additional support. I'll do what I can.
Okay.
All right, any other comments for public session? Okay, at this time, we need to move into an executive session for an exemption to talk about a contract personnel
Cool.
issue.
So let's take 5, guys. Thank you. Thank you. There we go.
I make a motion to approve Superintendent Seuss's request for faculty leave of absence.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oh,
Any
yeah.
abstain?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
The last thing we do before we end our session tonight is to reflect upon the meeting.
Right.
I have a question. Here, in this agenda, there's from the Director of Technology and Innovation, and there's some things written that we didn't touch on in the meeting, so I'm just wondering why this is here. And,
The directors are asked to submit reports that are not always asked to read them for a time straight. So that's why they're in there. And Carrie, for example, asked for Jen because of the grant reception, but typically the board has now asked that we not only the superintendent's report and sometimes business managers report be read or spoken to in the meeting.
so my main concern is just this YouTube. So I'm just wondering like what this means. Do I email the?
Permission, if you're under 18, you need parental permission for them to use that. This is the grades they would be using it on.
Because Google's changed their, their what?
Policy.
Policy, basically. So an email went out to all, like I signed it today for each of my kids on if I okay certain permissions in the school for the different Google
Applications.
apps. Yeah.
But if you have specific questions regarding it, sorry, you can email Raf, like directly.
So each of the key people who work for Sherry in the central office submit a report every month into that board package. But they're not always asked to like read it because these meetings already go 4 hours and we just found that they would stand up and read verbatim what was in their report. But we can still ask questions even if they don't read it.
So I can ask questions and get into this and.
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
have tonight, instead we just skipped over it because you didn't speak to it.
Yeah, but next time, if you see something, if you read in there and you want to ask questions on it, they're all sitting here at the meetings, like Raf was here.
Yeah.
So, don't be afraid to speak up and say, hey, there's something in this, so.
But then I'll email him and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'll give you an explanation.
Yeah,
Yep.
but Raf is, they're all here, so yeah, if you do have something, a question on anything that's in there, and they have, like, do speak up, Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And principals too are all online. For.
But I should just email Raf with my
Yep.
concerns to
Yes.
start off.
And they're very responsive. I'll get back to you probably the same day, if not next.
Yeah, Raf is great.
As for other reflection, I'd like to throw out anytime there's a community petition of over 100 to 150 signatures, maybe we address it as a board and discuss it. That's all. I just feel like we're not giving the people that sign that petition in particular, or in general, enough respect to even discuss. I mean, that over 100, almost 150 signatures left, I knew that's a decent part of our community, and we're not even discussing it, so I don't know what we're representatives of our community, so I expected to have some sort of conversation about it, that's all.
Even if it's an executive session, maybe.
Even if it is, yeah, at least something, I think the board as a whole should discuss it, if there's that many community members feeling a certain way. I mean, in regards to that one in particular, I spoke to probably 25, 30 people on it. And it's just, they're not being heard in any way, other than a simple signature on a petition, so.
Maybe,
Hopefully that.
Well, that's that new committee, hopefully that.
Well, that was the idea, yeah, but still, I don't wanna harp on it now, I mean, it's not the proper time, but.
maybe rather than have a number or whatever it is, maybe there's a way to just put an item into an agenda or an executive session that you would like to pull it in. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't,
agree with
rather
that.
than put on automatic that if there's 50 people, suppose there's 49 people, I mean.
Right, no, that's what I mentioned earlier for the committee, but I just think. Even without that committee being informed, I think it's kind of ridiculous that we didn't touch on that at all with. Over 100 signatures plus. And there was signatures from every single town. So I just figured we would have discussed it a little, that's all.
Well, we have to, so if you wanna discuss it, ask the chair to put it on the agenda, it's on you, just like it's on any one of us.
Right.
To get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I agree.
So-
I was just waiting to see if anyone else cared to want to discuss it.
Can we put that on next month's
I think we
agenda?
all care, and when our chair recommended a response that supported our superintendent's employment, we essentially agreed with the chair. If we didn't, we would have asked for a meeting, a special meeting, a vote, so. I mean, we've had a full board meeting since that petition came out. Now we've got this one.
Okay.
All right, any other reflections?
I'm tired.
That's fine.
I'm gonna make a
Also,
motion.
having one of these meetings after daylight savings is like really unusual.
I will make a motion to adjourn 9:06.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much, everybody.